And he's also got a medallion on the outside of his clothing, and he's wearing the same glasses that Walter wears in The Big Lebowski just after he has the argument about Jesus.
Dress up for this podcast. It's the highlight of my Sunday evening.
I reached this from a different place to Chris Cooper, who obviously, if you write race cars off at that frequency, you can't form attachment emotionally, because it would just be shattering.
You only do that if you win lots of stuff, Chris, and I recognise that for challenge.
Also, don't forget he was subject to one of the greatest pieces of Murray Walker commentary when he gives someone the bird. He goes, "That's it, John's saying I'm going to be first."
That was the 1992 decider at Silverstone, and I was there in the grandstand at Luffield.
Hello, and welcome to the Car Podcast with Chris Harris and his little friends. Chris Cooper just called me a member of the Cambridge University netball team because I made a crude reference about how we might use our shots in landscape as opposed to portrait. It really was puerile of me, and I'm sorry, Chris. I apologise now on air for ever telling your name.
Apologise to little Chris.
Yes, little Chris. Now, we're starting off with what should be our £4,000 challenge, following on from last week's well-received £3,000 challenge. However, a man called Jason, who Neil calls Clever Jason on account of his being extremely clever, has written in with a suggestion on how we might alter the formula for our £3,000 or ever-increasing pound challenge. Who wants to explain it, Neil or Chris?
I'll explain it.
Chris Cooper. Okay, we're going to go straight to the brain.
So Cameron also had a bit of an observation yesterday to say, when you get a bit tedious going forward. And then this morning, Clever Jason wrote to the number nerds of this podcast, which is Neil and me, to say something very similar. And he said, what you need is a quadratic equation. What? And we have...
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I think he's taken this equation.
Can I be clear? Did he just write that down? Or is that actually, does that mean something?
It does mean something. It's quite technical, Chris. I'll explain it to you later. But it is actually, that is quite technical. We'll put a little...
It's not that technical. So amount, the amount
is
equal to half of the number of weeks squared in thousands of pounds, plus a half of the number of weeks we're at, plus 2. And it's very clever because what he's done is the quadratic part means that we don't just keep going up by 1,000, we go up by a square. But he's been very, very clever because he's made it half of that square. So if we were in week 5, instead of being 25,000, so suddenly ramping up, because we would normally have been only at 8,000, we get to 12,500. Then what he very cleverly does for the lower numbers is add a little bit of the week in thousands. So when we're in week 2, week 3, instead of ramping up far too slowly, it ramps up just a little bit quicker. And then the bit called the free term, the last bit at the end, he's picked arbitrarily a 2. Yes. It could have been a 3, it could have been a 5, but the 2 is very, very good for the early weeks.
So
a very clever equation.
No, so can you do me a favor, Chris Cooper? Can you now say I was about to say that?
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
Now can you read out
double maths, physics, and chemistry, even when you're in your mid-50s?
Do you want to read out what you said? Are we reading out the equation?
What you need is a quadratic equation, which we've just seen. I think this is actually a much cleverer quadratic equation. I think this is part of the equation which they use to steer intercontinental ballistic missiles to people on the podcast who've drone on and on and on and on about GCSE math or whatever it is, mentioning no names.
Okay, read it out.
You need a quadratic equation. Whilst this might sound complicated, no, it doesn't sound complicated at all, does it, Manish? What it amounts to is just add the number of times you run the game to the last amount. So next week is the second time, 3 plus 2 equals 5k to spend. E.g., by the time you get to week 9, you will have spent 45k. So week 10 will be 45 plus 10 equals 55,000. Fine British pounds. So this week is 5k. And
he sent us.
We have an app that's been doing this, and the app has printed out in high quality format what we'll be doing each week. There it is. 3K first week.
I can't even see that.
Yeah, well, this week 5K, next week 8K.
Brilliant.
Then 12, 17, 23, 30, 38, 45, 55 in the next 10 weeks. It's a nice upward curling curve.
And I will forever cherish the moment where Manish absolutely shat on your ability to read that out and the look on your little face. And don't worry, we'll get him back.
It's all right. We started low. We can only get lower.
So I'm going to start because I'm an idiot and I didn't obviously work out it was 5K, and I've been a bit busy trying to get the 959 film finished. So I went for 4K. So I'm going to add in £1,000 of my own labour to get this little girl going. And I hope there'll be some knowing nods by my learned friends here. We're talking about something that goes up in value, and there's one phenomenon that I think we cannot ignore, any of us. That is the increase in what are quite ordinary cars that happen to have a massive domestic appeal. If you're in America, ordinary muscle cars seem to be very valuable. And if you live in the UK, anything with a Ford badge just seems to go up in value. And they're not necessarily cars I'd want to own. So I found myself a Gen 2 Fiesta XR2, the one with the grey plastic body extensions. It was a great looking car with the pep pot wheel. And
with the Kent engine?
Is that the first edition one that's got the Kent engine?
No, but the Gen 1 and Gen 2 both have Kent engine.
No.
Okay, yeah. It's a wheezy 4-cylinder thing. It's in every single dynamic area, anything French beats it. But it's not a Ford, and it doesn't pull at the heartstrings of most of this country. So I think it's a bit ratty, this one. There's a picture of it. It needs some work, but I'm going to put £1,000 of work into it. And I'm going to end up...
That is actually quite cool. I used to have one of those.
Did you?
A million years ago, I had one of those. I really enjoyed it. It was a lovely thing to pedal. There's pepper pot wheels, slightly rounded version from the Mark II, 96 horsepower, 1.6 litre engine, Kent engine, same as in the Formula Ford race car. How much do you need? It's brilliant.
Magic.
So I just think if we're looking at future value, you go onto the internet now. If you want to get in a wormhole of madness, look how much some people pay for fast Fords that were absolutely shat on by the motoring press when they were new. They always used to lose all the group tests, but ultimately they're fast Fords. You could buy cheap parts for them, and that's what people wanted. So I'm going for that. Neil Clifford, you've not had a chance to speak much because the other two were arguing about mathematics. Carry on.
No, it's all good. I adored Clever Jason, so we're very much in awe of him and his quadratic equation. Can't even say it, let alone understand it. So I was, when we were going 4K, I was going Mini Cooper S. So unfortunately, I'm jumping because I already had a 5K one in my head. So I've jumped forward to what I already had planned. And frankly, you can have a 5K, a 6K, a 7K, a 10K, a 20K in this car. And it would be such a miss if none of us raised this car as a cool shed. Not so sure it's going to go up in value because there's about 400 million of them been made. But it's a Mazda MX-5.
Yeah.
And it would be a travesty if we, because it's I own one. It's a Japanese copy of the original Lotus Elan, obviously, but it will never break down. It will never let you down. It's got beautiful little pop-up lights. You can buy them for every single value. You can get a 1K one or a 2K one. I mean, there's so many of the bloody things. But I found a lovely little silver with blue car. And here we go. So let me find a little picture of it, because we've got to actually demonstrate these are real ads.
Yes, exactly, Will Clifford.
These are real ads, and here's my little car, little silver one with red leather. I went for Mark 1 because maybe in a week or two I'll go Mark 2 or Mark 3. And this guy is brilliant because not only does he tell me how wonderful the car is, he tells me how wonderful he is, which I think is really good as a car salesman.
How much more do you need?
Before I tell you more about the car, may I tell you a little about myself and why you should buy from me? I've been buying and selling Mazda MX-5 for over 20 years, and whilst I'm a car dealer, I consider myself to be a true car enthusiast, and I only sell the actual cars that interest me. And I sleep, breathe, and adore fast cars, and I've literally sold thousands of these over 30 years. And I believe everything he said,
So do I.
and I think he's a
we-
lovely
Wait,
man.
did he say he sleeps with the cars?
I may well have not read that correctly. But
So he's not
anyway,
Go your version, though.
is he in a relationship with an MX-5?
no, look at that.
I know.
You know, it's a Lotus Elan, but it won't break down.
It won't break down.
And
Quite
honestly-
twitchy. Not one.
So aren't we all?
In the
Yeah.
snow. Oh my days.
Yeah. That's not a Lotus Elan.
No, that'll get edited out.
Yeah.
That's what I used to get in the car. I just got to no. That's what I used to get the whole time when I was being a bad boy.
Yeah.
Manish.
I may almost add, there is a rumor that Chris Harris is not particularly into MX-5s, and we've got to. I know you'll deny it, but we need.
Oh
we
no,
need-
he's got to go and get something.
Right. No, I'll tell you about this now. So, I wrote a blog when blogs were new things on Evo's website about 15 years ago, and I outlined why I thought the MX-5 might be a bit overrated as a driver's car, and I always support what I say with my experiences. But the point of the article was to celebrate the Toyota M. That's not fair, Cooper. Put that down now. How fucking dare you show that now?
Christmas cake. It's
That's
delicious.
outrageous. Christmas cake is showing us. That's just outrageous.
It's a month old.
So it was to celebrate the fact that everyone went on about the MX-5, but I thought the little MR2 Toyota was more fun, mid-engine, what have you. The pylon I got.
Yes.
The MX-5 at the time was referred to as a hairdresser's car. You couldn't call it that now. It's a bad phrase. I tell you what, the owner profile was not very hairdressery with the things they said to me and what they were going to do to me. And it didn't involve whale clippers or straighteners either. They were going to come after me with axes and stuff. And
I'm a member of the Mazda MX-5 Owners Club, and it's discussed on a regular basis. So I think we need to put that right. And one day,
I still don't really even feel that connected by them. They're fine. I drive past them, and I always say to these people, "And is yours a standard car?" And they go, "No, I've done this and this and this and this to it." Well, then it's not an MX-5, is it? You've played with it a lot.
There you see, it's all coming out again. You can't hide it. But we're going to try to convince you what a wonderful little car it is. Rear-wheel drive, so light, beautiful steering. Will never let you down.
You love yours so much. You had a Jaguar V6 put in it, doubled the power, and totally altered the interior.
There is a rumor that happened.
Hold on, it was in a magazine article, and you were with your son, and you were dressed as superheroes.
You were dressed as something off Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah, I was dressed as Batman.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But that's another story.
Oh my days! He's put the picture up again.
So who's
I
next?
think for the audience, you need to explain what that photo is.
no, he doesn't.
I'm losing control of the crowd here. Right, Chris Cooper, what are you going for? Manish was next.
Manish is next. I'll go last.
Okay, I actually quite like the British theme. I had a good trawl, and I remember the wise Mr. Harris once saying, if you're going to buy a car, and you've got to look at a few things. I mean, what is it going to ultimately be worth? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have your experience. But certainly looking at depreciation as a marker, you would probably call this a bit leggy, but I found this really pretty Jaguar XK 4.2 litre
Is
for
it the first?
£4,999.
I can't see.
It is a bit leggy.
No, that won't be.
7,000 miles.
No,
but
that's
stunning.
the
Black
second
leather
gen car.
interior.
If
Can you
it's
put it a bit
4.2,
closer,
it's
man?
second
Put it a
gen,
bit
yeah.
closer. Second
Yeah.
gen car.
Second gen, yeah.
You turn up. If you told people you paid $5,000 for that, they'd never believe
No
you.
one believe you. Exactly. I just think it's a
That's quite
pretty
impressive.
thing. You'd put it in your shed or your garage or whatever. You might take it out, you might not. But my God, you could spend a few £1,000 on that and probably make it perfect.
That's a good choice, particularly as Jaguars are doubling in value on a weekly basis.
We love them. Come on.
I think
By now, they're not
sorry,
making them
Manish.
anymore.
Manish, you're winning so far for me. Chris Cooper, can you beat him?
I don't think I can beat that.
Oh,
Well, actually, there are three reasons. One, because I don't think my car is actually as good as yours for £5,000. That's a lot of motive for the money. The other two reasons are my car's not actually £5,000; it's 5.5. And secondly, I think it's just sold. Apart from that, it's great. It's this.
oh, that is
Oh,
lovely.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is.
I went for the
See-
red car on that website.
Yeah. So we know this is the Heel and Toe Cars of the
Mm.
lovely Christian, who has some amazing cars. In fact, we could probably run this competition and this little segment entirely from his website for the next 6 or 7 weeks. This is 2003 Mini Cooper S. We had one of those in the family in
Yeah.
period. 2003 Mini Cooper S, 6-speed manual. Had the grey roof, not the white roof. Didn't like the white roof, but this is quite cool actually when you see it again. With the chili pack. Remember the chili pack?
Yeah.
Yep.
Chili pack, which had essentially those mini light like wheels,
Yeah.
which my very first mini when I was a student had until some reprobate, probably from a local university netball team, Colchester or Croydon or somewhere, had heaved them away.
What?
So, so yeah, 2003 Mini Cooper S. Although I
That's
do think,
good.
Manish, your Jag,
Yeah.
£5,000 for a series for a facelift XK.
Yeah, it's good.
That's
V8.
good.
to-
That's good work.
We used to do these things on car magazines when everyone ran out of ideas, but actually it was always the best idea. You were given a budget, you had to turn up with something, and no one knew. We were doing it long before Top Gear were doing what they would do, but of course they took it and ran with it and did great things. But for me, it was always about if you turned up and everyone else went, I cannot believe you paid that for that. You'd won,
Yeah.
hadn't you? And I think judged by that, Manish has won that because I think all of us went, you can't get one of those for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
There's, of course, a significant fine to be paid.
Look, I'm stopping you here. Cooper, step back from the microphone. You keep closing the gap between you and your mic so much that people driving are going to have their speakers blowing out of their doors. Get back from that mic. Get back. Get back. Further. Further. Come on.
He started to get the giggles.
Now talk.
He can't.
No!
Oh, I was going to say now. Actually, you've got to show. You've got to
There's a
show that it's
fine.
an actual advert, Manish.
You were
haven't just
saying
done
it
it
is
on Photoshop.
It is an actual advert.
Okay. Well, then,
that was
You're
so
showing
not
it to us.
alarming. Look.
does Manish know what Cat C means?
Cat
Yeah,
S.
cat
Is it Cat S? Is it Cat S on there?
No.
Did it say Cat S on there?
No, it's just got a leaping cat rawr, on the bonnet.
All right, well done.
Rawr.
Okay. I think we've done that one.
Okay, right. Let's move on. Oh
Ooh.
God, I've been okay. This has been suggested several times. It's a bullet I've dodged as many times as possible, but I've had to cave in because these reprobates keep asking me, particularly one person: do cars have genders? I mean, I don't want to get in trouble here, and I'm going to hand this over to Neil with an I.
Well, I think it's a credible question, not as if it's a serious question. You can have questions that are light-hearted, and not serious, and we should all take this discussion in the manner that is approached in a light-hearted way. And I think sometimes for me, and we're all talking very individually here, we're not talking about a global view. They do have genders because I often do call a car she. It does happen. I have to be honest. And there's no deep thought into that. I just say, oh, isn't she beautiful? I'm looking at a Ferrari 512 Berlinetta Boxer here, carb edition, of course. And I say, she is gorgeous. I don't know whether there's clearly no deep meaning to that, but I do use that gender. And the one thing I'd like to say on that is often I don't. It's randomly it's random cars that I do that, and I don't really understand why that is the case. But I thought maybe if men often say she is gorgeous as a car, maybe women do the opposite. And I did ask my wife, and said, "Do you have genders with your cars? Do you ever think about a car being a gender?" And she said, "I do, but they're always a girl."
Mm.
She had a Volkswagen Beetle when I met her, pink car. It was her 21st birthday. And that was, she said, obviously the car was quite feminine in its shape and its colour. And that was a girl. And my daughter's got a Beetle now. And they always call that car a she. But my wife said no specific reason, nothing deep or serious, she would not have a car that was a man. That is the view from our household. That is all I would like to say on that matter, because I can't get into my notes because I've forgotten my Apple ID. So that's everything that I can remember from that little bullet point.
I think you said it all.
For those of us that can't see Neil, he's wearing a slightly sort of Russian hat, which looks like it might be leisure wear in the gulag. He's got one leather driving glove on his left hand. His leisure wear shows a Champion spark plug logo on his left tit. I can't see what the right one is. And he's also got a medallion on the outside of his clothing. And he's wearing the same glasses that Walter wears in The Big Lebowski just after he has the argument about Jesus.
Dress up for this podcast. It's the highlight of my Sunday evening.
It is what my mother would call quite a get-up. So
Yes.
I'm gonna pass this over to Chris Cooper, who had a mouthful of Christmas cake a second ago, and hopefully will now spit it all over his laptop.
It was delicious Christmas cake, actually. Thank you very much for asking. This is a really interesting one, isn't it? I personally don't gender cars. To me, they are it rather than he or she.
Yeah.
Boats. If you ask me whether a boat, because I'm quite into boating and sailing and stuff, did lots of sailing when I was younger and a bit older and so forth. And perhaps because some of them are made of wood still. And there's something about the greater sort of anthropomorphic characteristics maybe of a boat. People still, I think, more often refer to boats as a she, particularly when they're being named, even big boats. And it'd be interesting to hear from members of His Majesty's Navy and the United States Navy, or indeed any other navies of those countries who are big supporters of a podcast, to see whether in their naval tradition, naval vessels are still referred to as she. I think they probably will be. I'm thinking back to, do women that I know have known?
Coming back to our podcast, any further thoughts?
I'm just expanding on the question. So, I think when I was at college, sometimes I really bloody hate you. Sometimes, not just sometimes.
I know.
When I was at college, my Mini at college it was an Austin Mini, but the Mini bit of the badge has fallen off. So it just said Austin on the back. And the two girls that I went to the car club with when we were in our first year, they referred to my Mini as Austin, maybe not that terribly imaginatively. But interestingly, they referred to the car as he, because it had they'd given it a male name.
Yes.
So they said, how is Austin? Is he well? Have you fixed him yet? Is he better from that time you stuffed him into the hedgerow on that last navigational rally you cocked up? So they would refer to him because it had a male name. So I think it's a bit more of a complex subject than we think. My only other slight sort of modern nervousness is it a throwback to sort of a previous time when there's a bit of chauvinism in there, which I don't like.
Possibly.
And I think I feel quite sensitive about that, and I feel actually quite strong about that. So personally, I don't gender cars. I'd be interested to hear from naval listeners whether they're boats or ships or aircraft carriers are gendered. Because I think that's part of the same broad subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
sorry.
all I have. I have no notes, but that is all I have to say on that subject.
Okay, so I'll add a bit here. Gender is if you've got children between the age of 13 and 20 whatever I've got. It's just a difficult subject, and I steer well clear of it. But I think there's actually something quite groundbreaking about the way people have gendered cars, particularly in this country. And I think I disagree with one thing Neil Clifford said. I don't often do this, and I agree with something that Chris Cooper says because they're
never
examples of what I believe in. I know. I think from my background, a lot of people, the genders attributed to cars went as follows: big, powerful luxury cars or sports cars were female, and little, more innocent cars were often male. So, Beetle, Herbie was always male. All Beetles, actually, for me, were always male. All my mates had Beetles; they were always male. But if your dad had a big Jaguar or a Mercedes, it was often she. And I don't think it was a form of disrespect. I think actually it might be a sort of matriarchal thing. So that I think you can stand behind. And I think often the small little car, the Renault 4, the Mini, all of those little cars were quite often male because they were sort of small, durable little things that served a purpose. It's quite curious that's slightly ahead of its time, I think. And I think it always was. That's the way it was. But I personally, I steer clear of it. And it came up in conversation a couple of days ago. So I was with Rebecca Evans, Queen Bee on Instagram. She's frankly a cracking journalist. She can really drive as well. She explodes the myth of the sort of female journalist that can't drive. She was sliding her M3 touring round at Landau, surprising everyone. She's just, great person and good buddy. And I was sitting in the M3 with her. She kept calling it she. She's a bit about calling it the old girl and what have you. And I said, what are you calling it that for? She says, well, I always call cars women, girls. They're always girls to me. And I'm like, I thought, well, actually, you can say that probably, but I don't want to. But she was really into it, and it was totally default natural for her. And then today, and I'm not saying this to make myself look good because I am a wanker. There's a local kid that lives around here who's part of the Ukraine rehousing situation, and he loves his cars. And whenever I can, I take him out in a car. So I had a message off him on Instagram, and he wants to go in the M5. And this is so bizarre. We're driving along, and his English is getting really good now. He's like 16 or 17 years old. He says, I call it she. Should I call it she? And I went, did you hack my phone and see what our agenda was for today's podcast? And I said, well, for me, it's not. He went, this is definitely a woman, this car.
Wow.
And so
Interesting.
that's a young kid who's saying that. So I prefer not to. And also, I'm sort of with Chris. It helps me form my own weird personal relationship with the car if I don't gender it. And it's quite anthropomorphic. It's not a nothing to me. I don't think it's an it.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
something. But I'd rather it wasn't gendered. And of course, I reach this from a different place to Chris Cooper, who obviously, if you write race cars off at that frequency, you can't form attachment to them emotionally because it would just be shattering. The amount
you only do that if you win lots of stuff, Chris, and I recognise that's a challenge for you.
Chris, it's really funny because I think the fundamental beauty of cars is why we gender them female. You find me a male other than something that Michelangelo would have sculpted, and with curves on it, and call it male. And that's quite funny, because I gender them all the time, and I think Neil hit the nail on the head for me with this. I've only ever gendered any car female or nothing at all. But interestingly, my sister, she's had a run of German cars, or she and her husband, they've had lots of Volkswagens, they've had Porsches. She will give them names, and her names are always nation specific. So she's had cars called Helmut, Wolfgang, Werner.
Men.
She actually gives them male names, especially if they're Volkswagens or Porsches.
Right.
Whereas, as you know, my rather beautiful, pretty 456 is called Lola.
I always think it's a dangerous strategy naming German machinery with German male names. You very quickly get yourself in trouble there. I'm not going any further with it, but you know where I'm going.
Not with us, you wouldn't, but with others, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I can. The emotional attachment. The emotional attachment thing is. I mean, I do have an emotional attachment to those cars that I have raced. So when you have some trophies, then some of those I have an emotional attachment with.
For the
There's not. There's not.
for the benefit of our audio listeners, Chris Cooper's just held up a picture of his trophy cabinet,
It's
which
actually a trophy room.
it's a trophy room
I
where
can't believe I
you
said that
walk
out
in.
loud.
It's one of those ones you walk in, the lights come on automatically, and there are life-size cardboard cutouts of him wearing Speedo's finest swimwear.
I haven't done that. Can I write that down? That's a good idea. Maybe for my birthday.
An individual spotlight on each trophy.
Yes.
I wonder what you're going to say there.
I know he's got more silverware than me. Right. Well, this is an interesting one. This could come across as being a bit negative, but because we mustn't whinge too much. What's the worst exhaust pipe? It's an area of car finishing that I'm very, very sensitive to, because I think done well, it is memorable and brilliant. Done badly, it is worse than the positive side is on a good execution. So let's start with Neil Clifford.
Oh, this could go on for an hour. We're going to not have any more subjects. The manager's probably got a chicken pie to put in the oven in 2 hours' time. This is so important, this discussion, isn't it? For me, I've got so many different angles on this. It's like a dodecahedron. But for me, it's the fake exhaust. It's the big, sporty hole that you get that you think, oh my God, look at that car. It's got such a big exhaust, must have a big engine, must be really fast. And then you look inside the hole and there's two pissy little exhausts or one pissy little exhaust inside. Yeah. You think, oh my God, that is so embarrassing that Mr. Car Designer designed something so fake that to impress us, but actually it's not real and there's a pissy little exhaust hidden inside. Now, I think probably that's okay-ish if it's a cheap car. If it's, I don't know, a bloody cheap little Volkswagen or something, and they're just trying to show off and make it a bit sporty, and you look inside, it's a little exhaust. But if you look at the Rolls-Royce Ghost,
Ooh.
and this is a car that, new was 200 and odd grand. And it's got a beautiful, big, sporty hole on either side, a bit like an SLX, right? SLS, a Mercedes SLS. So you think, oh my God, look at that! It's got a big.
Sorry,
V8.
just say this slower, please, Neil. Slower.
Like a Mercedes SLS.
It's a bit before that, but never mind.
No, I got the giggles, and I'm not going there. I know exactly what you said. And then you look inside, and there's two tiny little shitty exhaust pipes that are sort of, and I think that is just the worst thing. And shame on you, Rolls-Royce, because Rolls-Royce, I think, do such a magnificent job, and you shouldn't do fake exhaust pipes.
Don't have to.
No. Be genuine or hide them. Have no exhaust pipe at all.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Cooper, where are you at with this?
There's one word that sums up what was on my notes, because I had one word for this, and it's what Neil said. It's authenticity. It's authenticity. Yeah. Exhaust pipes for us when we're growing up, and even now, we talked about it a month or two ago about speedometers, looking inside the car to see how far the speedometer went. Did it go past 100 or to 120, 150? And we grew up thinking at cars, we still do now, which model is that? Oh, I'll look at the back, see how many exhaust pipes it's got. If it's got twin exhaust pipes, it could be a 6-cylinder BMW. If it's got 4, it could be a V8 or an M car or whatever it is. Now, who knows? It's a fundamental part of authenticity, which I don't think is for old farts. I think it's for young people too. And I think the other more modern manifestation of that is the popping and banging, the unnecessary and unwarranted popping and banging from even the most, because the Golf thing or the little, a little VW up or whatever, you know what it is. It shouldn't pretend to be something that it isn't. So to have a big, bassy exhaust pipe with lots of pops and bangs, it's a 1 litre VW up. So it's about authenticity. So modern exhausts where the designer or the stylist has just got carried away in the way you described, Neil. I have nothing to add to my learned colleague's submission other than to confirm I feel exactly the same, and it's about authenticity, my lord. I rest my case.
Manish, well, how do you feel about this?
Well, I do think there's one really, really ugly exhaust. I was literally walking around our square, and there was a Cadillac Escalade ESV parked at the top of the square. This thing's the size of a bus. Shouldn't be in England anyway.
I like
But
them.
if there was an exhaust that looked like an effluent pipe on a Bangladeshi beach, it belongs to this car.
Do you have a picture of that we can put on?
Yes, I do. So here's the car, and you
Yes.
can see the exhaust just coming out by the
Me
right
too.
rear wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Old Escalade, yeah.
No, wait. This is just bad. And that's the only word for it. I mean, how can you just look at that? It's just basically a rusty pipe.
See,
And
why
that's
doesn't
really
it
like that.
Effluent lands on your pavement.
Also,
It's a side exhaust.
it's very interesting. This a side exit, but I think
Exactly.
Manish has touched on the dangler. I think that the dangler is a problem. You know, an exhaust. You either want an exhaust. The way that these pipes protrude is everything. The way they present themselves to the world. And if you've got the thing sort of drooping out, it doesn't matter if it's the back of a saloon car, the side of an SUV. Stop sniggering. It's true. And I think exhausts are everything to me. I want to endorse everything the learning colleagues have said and add some examples. Chris Cooper's quite right about authenticity, because the G series, the G20, the current 3 Series, if you buy the base 320i, you get 2 exhaust openings either side, and it's exactly the same as a 330. That's not on. There's no graduation point.
Yep.
There's no graduation point. And actually, this is not about young people at all. Because if you've got a telephone, your kids can spot what telephone you've got by how many of those you've got. That's the equivalent. That's their equivalent of exhaust pipes. They look at how many holes you've got on your telephone. That's status, isn't it? There you go. You see? So if you only got 2, then that's what I had before. So, but it kills me that exhausts have just been forgotten. The fake tips, I mean, they can fuck right off. Excuse my French, but they are awful. They are terrible things, and I can't complete that out. But that's just terrible.
Fake
and I
what?
think
Tips.
Oh,
don't start that. We're not talking
You
about
did.
Not you as well.
You started that about 45 minutes ago.
love the
You're
fact-
just
I love
playing
the
it at a
fact
higher
that
level.
I seem to be offering a smut contagion here, which is good. So I think there's lots of examples of exhausts that weren't. I mean, sports car exhausts are interesting for me. I think the worst thing about the 996 design is the exhaust tips on the 996. They just don't really work. They're in the wrong place. They're just
slightly
not
square.
quite right.
Yeah.
I don't like chrome extra finishes on the back of exhaust. The diameter's got to be right. Ours was the max power generation where we were all fitting these big back boxes. I mean, I remember when the Pico Big Bore came out, you could basically have a 4-inch exhaust thing coming out of the back, and then you had all these big Japanese ones. They were a bit silly. I always remember David Vivian, I think it was, or one of those great writers describing the fact that it had an exhaust the diameter of which would allow a badger to sleep there overnight or something like that. And I thought he was bang on. The idea that a wild animal would creep in and snooze there overnight whilst the car wasn't running. But there was one particular one that grated with me, and I'm really being sad now. I thought the AMG's exhaust tip game in the W210 around that era was really clever. It was so recognisably AMG. If you just saw from a distance those
quad.
tips, you
The
got
4.
them, the quad.
Yeah.
And then when they went to the 211, it was good. And then the 212, they went for like a trapezoidal
It's terrible.
angle to it. And they just, even now, I think they look shit. They don't look as, am I wrong? Or am I different?
You're not.
No, weirdly, the Aventador. Do you remember with the central hexagon with the sort of very wide?
I like that.
That was a good version of it.
Yeah. But this is the AMG thing, and they were hidden in a sort of cowl, and I don't know.
Yeah.
There's lots of them, and actually, the first time I saw a 365 like yours, Neil, with the 6 exhausts, I was like, "Wow, are they too small? But they
No,
fit the
they're good.
car,
They're
and
functional.
they fit the ambition of the car as well.
It's the only
So
thing about 512 that went backwards for me, because 365 has 6, but 512 has 4.
4.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd sell it. I'd
Six
sell
are
it to one
really,
of us, Neil.
the 6 are really good.
So please, obviously there's lots of tasteless hot hatches and stuff that have got bad exhaust gains, but please add in the comments examples of exhausts that you think missed the mark by a mile.
Can I just add one to that, actually, while I've been thinking about it? I thought about it earlier on. What was the car in Beverly Hills Cop
Where
that
they
was
put the
the subject
banana.
of the banana in the tailpipe? Was that like a Ford Crown or a Ford Victoria or something like that?
No, it
Any
wasn't. I think it was a little Buick.
Buick. So any car whose exhaust pipe, particularly a big American thing, involved in the law enforcement industry, that has such a puny tailpipe that a banana can be inserted to fatal consequences, that's not good either.
No, it's not good.
Yeah.
Right, we're moving on because Cooper's used the verb insert, and I always find that worrying. So, why we love the new Aston Martin Vanquish? What a good title for a very positive section in this January podcast,
Yeah.
as the nights are still too long, and the weather's still too shit, and the economy's still too on its arse. Neil Clifford, cheer us up.
Oh, bloody hell. I think there's so many reasons why we should love it, right? It's gorgeous. And I think we have to thank, in some respects, Ferrari for deliberately designing some really ugly cars to make Aston Martins look even more beautiful than they always are. Because you look at the thing, I mean, I sort of wish the back was a bit more V600, but I'm being overly critical. For me, that it's 9.5 out of 10. Look at it.
Yeah.
I think the front and side profile nails it over any new sports car. I think it's fantastic. It's so Aston. It's muscular. It's handsome. It's understated. It's British, and I think that's another reason why we should love it. Because you know what, Aston Martin as a brand has been through so much shit,
Still
and
is.
they're working so hard and actually designing such pretty cars. They've sorted out the interiors. That's another point. That interior is fantastic. It's got plenty of knobs. The quality, I've got a mate with a DB12. The quality is really good, really, really good. So they've thought super well about that. The colours, and I know everyone's avoiding talking about colour, and one day I'm going to get colours onto the agenda.
Definitely need to talk about it.
The colours are really fabulous. You can get some amazing specs in this car. So it's gorgeous. It's British. It's got a I'm doing everything. I'm sorry. V12. It's got a bloody V12 engine. None of this bullshit V6 bloody thing or V8. The interior is lovely. The quality is really good, and we should all adore it and all go and buy one or be lent one by Aston Martin for a week.
Well, that's a good point. I gave old Kev a bit of a nudge this week, so hopefully he might deliver something at some point.
Yeah.
Manish, how do you feel about the Aston Martin Vanquish?
Well, when you sent this out onto the group chat, I just got straight onto the configurator. And I have to say, I just agree with every single thing Neil has said. But I actually really love the back. I think that whole Mustang American look
It is a bit Mustang, yeah. I mean, you've got to look at it positively, I suppose.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It looks big. My friend Max, I remember years ago, he was told by his boss he couldn't drive around his BMW Z3 because they had a very big property company and they had to go and do this. And he said, "You've got to get yourself a decent English car." So he went and tried. He's 6'3", very muscular, a big guy. And he just couldn't get into an Aston Martin. He found an Aston Martin versus a Bentley Continental, completely different cars. I have to say, going on to this configurator, I think if this car had existed 5 years ago, he would have been seriously tempted.
There's plenty of room in them now.
Oh, beautiful, like big car though.
Yeah.
Big car, but the proportions are absolutely perfect. And I think if that thing, I could imagine that next to a Continental, and you'd go, which one? Because the configurator, by the way, it had about 92 shades of color.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But they had a beautiful 1959 Aston Martin green. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just ridiculously pretty. And I have to say, there was one particular silver, the name of which I've forgotten, that I loved. And you could have that with a navy blue interior.
Yeah.
They gave no other options about the interior. It was just perfect. Really deep silver car with a navy blue interior, back like a Mustang, the front like a classic Aston Martin, the side somewhere between Aston and Bentley. Beautiful car. Yeah,
Yeah.
they should definitely loan us one. We should speak to Adrian and say, Adrian, speak to them, loan us a car each for a week. Man shall have 3 cars for a week then.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Chris Cooper, what are you thinking here?
Why wouldn't we love it?
Oh,
Yeah.
God, look at that.
It's
Why
gorgeous.
wouldn't we love that?
Fuck. I mean,
Even
I'm
better.
very sweary tonight. I really want one. This is an incentive to go out
Yeah.
and look.
So, as part of the selfless approach that I take to this podcast, I dragged my kicking and unwilling son Cameron along to the Supercar Valley, that is that road in Hatfield,
Yeah.
where all of the posh car dealers are. And I suspect you know where it is. And it's quite, even this time of year, you've got to drive very slowly, otherwise you mow down the dozens and dozens of Instagrammers and influencers are taking photographs of everything that moves in that road.
Content
So I went
creators.
into both the Ferrari dealership to look at the 12 cylindry and then this. And honestly, the people in Ferrari must look down the road to think, whoops.
Yes.
I have a slight problem. And that's why when I went on the configurator, hopefully somebody's taken a note of this at Aston Martin Towers and has got that precise car on its way to me. You'll notice that the wheels in here are mostly not black and mostly not shit, because this is, I have to
Yeah, I
say,
agree. Yeah.
It's like
It's-
Bristol. That's the one at Bristol.
it is, yeah. Show me a shitterer wheel than that. So 825, quite expensive. The one in the dealership yesterday we saw, it's about 400k.
Whoa, really?
And the chap in the dealership
Worth every
yesterday
penny.
came up to me and said, "It's worth every penny." And you can see I was slightly swaying around. He said, "Would you like a glass of water?" So I felt better after that. Had a little lie down. So yeah, I think I love it, I have to say. And when the rear bit, if you go into the configurator, you can see that rear bit there, you
Yeah.
can specify in the body color rather than it just being
Oh, I
black.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've done that in the configurator. So hopefully, when I've logged in again, they'll see that that's what I really want, that sort of color there.
It's the prettiest car on sale today,
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I think.
Absolutely beautiful.
I
Do
love
you
it.
think it's what, £400,000? A lot.
Well, it's got a lot of
money,
extras
though,
on it,
isn't
but yeah, you know, it's 824 horsepower.
Yeah,
It's a
sure.
12 Aston Martin that looks 20 times better than a 12 cylindry.
Yeah,
So
Fair.
there's one. I think it's brilliant. I'm really glad that Aston Martin still has these cars. It must be so difficult running that car company and trying to forge a sensible strategy, because on the one hand, everything that anyone that is new to the company does is about trying to make the V8 Vantage, the DB12 and the Vanquish irrelevant, because they feel they have to move the game on and we mustn't rely on these front engine GT cars. But it feels like they've just relaxed into it and gone, do you know what? It might not be a spectacular mid-engine, what have you, but it's kind of what our customers want. They want to pretend they're James Bond. They want to have a front-engine, beautiful car
Yeah.
that sounds like an Aston Martin, looks like an Aston Martin. Sometimes if people want rice pudding with some brown sugar on it, just give them it. Don't give them fucking 8 courses with sashimi and starfish ring pieces and stuff. You don't need it. So it's simple fare, and I know it's expensive. It's only got one problem for me, and that is does it pass the test of this particular marketplace? This is a really tricky one to pass. The used Ferrari F12 Berlinetta. These cars are available for like 140, 150 grand.
150, yeah.
I've given just about everything, and I tell you, they're brilliant. They're just brilliant. If I was in the market, I'd just be thinking, save myself 250 and have the best V12 front engine Berlinetta ever made.
Yeah, it's the last pretty Ferrari.
It's Sergio, it's Luca, it's a brilliant car. And I think the Vanquish, if it has a weakness, it's it's been drawn into this vortex of inflation that's left a whole category of cars a bit high and dry. They sit at a price point where even their normal customers are going, what? They react like Manish did. They go, 400? What? In my head, that's a £250,000 car, which is ridiculous.
Well, it
That's
might
still
well be next
unaffordable
year.
for most people. But yeah, but it's they've ended up on the tide line of a tsunami, and now the water's gone back out again. Everyone's going, what? 400 grand. That's the only problem for me. But I tell you what,
you're not comparing it to F12. I mean, you are, and it's a tough one because F12 is one of the most gorgeous cars ever made. But if you're in the market for one of the best cars you can buy, you're not going to buy an 8, 9, 10-year-old car with no warranty.
you're absolutely right. Of course, it isn't 400 grand, is it? It's 50 down, and it's whatever you pay a month, and you're gambling on the residual. But which is still out of most. I know it's a crazy hypothetical thing for most people.
Yeah.
But I agree. It's in the previous generation. If you said to me, have an 812 or whatever they were making, a DBS or whatever the thing was, if you did the objective road test, you'd reach a similar conclusion. If you're writing a check, you were only going to buy the Ferrari. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Agreed.
I could see myself having the Aston over the 12-cylinder. I've not driven the 12-cylinder, and I look forward to having a go sometime in 2028 when they let me. But that Aston Martin wins on look for me.
We love it.
Isn't the automotive journalist gossip that I've heard as this car is the one?
I think it is really good. I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that I had some issue. I didn't feel the V8 and the 12 were that finished, but I've heard that this is a bit of a monster.
But you know the guy who shepherded that car. I mean, he only left a little while ago. Was Vigna?
Yeah.
He was running Aston Martin when they developed that car. So the man who gave you your F12 probably gave you that
interior is gorgeous.
Oh,
I think. Although
stunning.
the fonts look a bit small.
The what?
The dash, the word.
Yeah, you can't. I found myself driving the 707 DB8s like that, so I could just see the dials.
Yeah, someone
have the readers on. You need bifocals so you can just have a little look down because there's a tiny little typeface on the dashboard.
Yeah, but gorgeous. Who's looking at the dash anyway? Looking at yourself in the mirror.
You got your HUD, haven't you? Now you got your HUD.
Yeah.
Head up. So we're moving on to the very simple question: DAB or FM? Come on, we're getting to the DNA of current enthusiasm now. So break it down, Manish. DAB or FM?
I sort of feel we asked this question a while ago.
No.
Actually.
No.
It feels like we did.
I would remember being as angry as I am now.
It could be a similar question, but not this exact one.
Well, probably you're probably right. So the 57-year-old in me says FM every day, but I'm not quite sure why. And it might have something to do with the fact that FM gave us so many crazy stations, and FM was the transition from sort of, medium wave or mono to being able to hear stereo in your cars. And there's a kind of lovely nostalgic link. DAB has given us just so many stations. And that's a good thing too. And if I can digress onto the thing that matters to me most, given that, where are we now? It's the 12th, isn't it? So I think Lola's probably 19 days away. They put in a rather beautiful Bluetooth receiver, which means I can do lots of DAB.
Yeah.
So,
what one have they put in?
Oh my gosh, Italian company, Audison,
Right.
something or other.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, I just love the idea of being able to listen to trillions and trillions of things that I could research and pre-program, and I guess DAB would be the answer. So nostalgia says FM. My tech head, which loves quadratics, says DAB.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some agreement, some nodding here. Chris Cooper, how do you feel about it?
I disagree.
Ooh.
I disagree. DAB is shit. It doesn't work. It doesn't work enough of the time for the benefits to be justifiable. If you drive outside of the southeast of England, certainly in London, you spend your whole time thinking, why is it stopped? And then you keep turning the volume up, and then the signal comes back in and it blows the roof off your car.
Yeah, it does do that.
So I am fundamentally frustrated with it because it doesn't bloody work for the vast majority of how we love to drive and parts of the world we go to. The other reason why I don't like it is, even though technically it should have supported a proliferation and diversification of listening, for some reason it's made it, and people who are in the industry will correct me as I get this wrong, but it feels to me as though there's been a homogenization of radio that we love to listen to in the car. So as a result of which, local FM stations, and I'm biased here, so pirate radio, when you're driving down the A30 to Cornwall, Devon's got lovely radio stations as well. When you come down the A30, and people know what it is, you start, as you're going westbound, and you go around that corner by Broadwood Widge or whatever it is, and you see the coming home trees, or the nearly home trees, on top of the hill, up there. You think, well, I can get Pirate FM now. Can't now, because it's gone. It's been bought by Greatest Hits or whatever it is. So, apart from it's shit and it doesn't work, my personal prejudice is that it has resulted in a homogenization of radio, local radio, and the stuff we love for, whether it's Devon or Cumbria or Cornwall or the West Midlands, so for those reasons, it's FM for me.
I never thought we'd hear such a searing deconstruction of DAB radio, and there is literally spit fleckled over the camera.
That's me being nice about it.
The Cooper is agitated. Now, let's go on to Neil Clifford.
I'm so torn on this because I sort of love and dislike both of them. Can I have that answer?
Yeah.
Because DAB works if you've got a really, really modern car. Take the new Defender, which I think is a really great car, as I've said before, because the screen is really good, and you just click on radio and you click on DAB, and suddenly there are all of the stations with their lovely little fonts, and it's very easy to tune, and you can find the BBC very easily, and it all works very nice. And apart from the very truthful thing, as Chris said, about the dropout, and I do get that but between my home and when I get onto the A41, I can't really get DAB, to be honest.
I mean,
it's not there. But by the way, we must talk about telephone signals at a later podcast, because how can a country of our potential and sixth biggest GDP in the world have the fact you can't actually use a mobile telephone? Anyway, anyway. So it is frustrating. The more frustrating bit on DAB as well is if you buy a single DIN unit, you want to upgrade your old car to a DAB, just as though Manish has explained he's doing, and you go to your lovely friends at Auto Audio in wherever they are, can't remember now. Anyway, on the A40, and they give you a single DIN unit from Alpine or from Becker. It's really bloody hard to get DAB working if you haven't got a big digital screen with all the fonts and everything, because you get those little numbers that I did it on my Subaru earlier, 223.202.500. I mean, what the fuck is that?
What is that? Seriously, what is that?
It's tuning. It's going into the DAB thing. It's going round and around and around and around, and you can't find. Radio 6 is a fantastic radio station. It's one of
absolutely freaking brilliant.
Yeah, and it's literally the only brilliant reason why I like DAB is Radio 6. And of course, if it was on FM, it'd be really good, but it's not. Radio 5, of course, is medium wave. So if you want to listen to the football, medium wave is so shit nowadays. You again need DAB because it's not on FM.
Yeah.
But when you start tuning, and I do hope that the guys have bought you something that works nicely on DAB. On a unit for single DIN, it's really difficult. And you try and find the BBC, you can find, I don't know, jazz highlights from the 70s or Christian radio, or you can find super niche things. You can't find bloody BBC very easily. It takes you like 3 hours. So I think it's frustrating, but when it works on a very modern car, it's good. On my last point is there's something quite wonderful when you have a lovely old FM radio that still nails it. You get in a sort of whatever they are. What are those 90s S600s?
Yes.
And you put that big Becker thing that would survive a nuclear war, and the buttons are about 4 centimeters square, and you click on the 4, and you think, oh, it's so cool because the previous owner already had it tuned to Radio 4, and it goes bang, 93.5, and it's clear as an absolute diamond. That is a really lovely experience when FM really nails it. It's a very nice thing. So I'm a little torn.
I love how regional it is. If I said to the other two, what is your natural Radio 4 frequency when you see it? Mine is not 93.5.
No, because you're not in the southeast.
What are you?
93.5
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What do you manage?
93.5.
I'm 94.3. 94.3 is Radio 4.
Yeah.
So that's why it's rich and lovely.
So, Manish, how do you feel about this?
I've answered the question.
You've already done it. Sorry. So I think I'm a bit torn here. So radio serves 3 purposes for me. It serves the Radio 6 is the music that I most want to listen to because it's just like a voyage of discovery. It's like sitting in a room with a clever person and they give you nuggets of information that you didn't know before.
That's true.
I'm driving along, shazamming everything basically.
Did you see Lauren Laverne's quit the breakfast slot?
Yeah.
Very sad.
But it's one of the things. If you wanted to show a foreigner what the BBC stood for and what it could do, it's one of the first things I'd show. I'd say this is commercial radio wouldn't be able to support this. It's too niche, but it's great. It also for me it's about cricket, so I'm TMS tragic. So you'll know where I'm going with this, and it's also about news. So I like the Today program in the morning. It winds me up, and it's not always what I want to be, but it's part of the uniform of being part of a society. And I know that my life's going fucking wrong when I don't listen to the Today program because I'm not up or I'm doing it wrong. I'm not engaging. So it's part of engaging with society. That for me. So the fact is they've never broadcast TMS on FM, which I think was always a massive problem for me. So my answer is this: I'm like Chris Cooper. I'm often in parts of the country where DAB just doesn't work, and a sort of part functioning radio service is a chocolate fire guard. It's just pointless. And the way that DAB crackles in and out of life isn't charming. The way longwave crackles in and out of life is charming. Maybe it's because we associate it with our I remember there's one of the stand-up comedians of the 70s and 80s, whose name escapes me, told a brilliant sketch about driving from Cardiff to Leeds, avoiding all bridges and radio masts and power cables because he wanted to listen to the cricket because it was a very important Ashes Test series. And it took him an extra 3 hours. And I always remember my father was of that generation where you would keep your radio unit and transfer it to the next car. So you had a Motorola radio, no cassette in it, that was taken out of every BMW, put into the next one every 2 years. And I always remember the tune that he would just sort of nerdle the tuning thing, but as it would go in and out, with the Rowan Atkinson impression from Blackadder Goes Forth, it was charming. Whereas the way that and quite a nice noise, the way DAB cuts out is like it's like C3.
You need 198.
198, yeah, obviously. Yeah. So what my solution is this: quite often in this country, because DAB can be a bit ropey, I use my phone. I use the Apple CarPlay, and I just go onto the internet radio and use TMS that way, and it's pretty good.
It's bizarre that works better than DAB because it shouldn't.
For sure, yeah.
And that's Chris Cooper is absolutely vindicated here. Yeah. It shouldn't. If DAB functioned properly, that wouldn't be better, would it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, but isn't DAB working? It's just your phone signal is better than your car signal.
Well, that's the point.
No, I've never. Most DABs have huge problems in very rural areas and in their valleys and stuff.
That's
like
right.
When I go out near here, I can't get it at all. Also, to refer back to your point about getting in old cars where FM nails it, I do love old radio.
Yes.
And headgear. Yeah. There's only one car that is normally brilliant, which trips up in this area. That's the 911 because they hid the aerial in the windscreens.
Yeah.
And over time, they deteriorate, don't they? And they're always shit.
Yeah. You can get in a 1982 roller, click that little Phillips with the green illumination, click it on, press number 4, bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be perfect.
Yeah. Don't
I
try
always
that
used
in an
to
Alpine.
Even if awful things had happened in my vehicles before they were traded in, I always made sure I just retuned it to Radio 4 before I handed it over, just to make sure.
No.
So the next thing we have is our 2-car garage. We're taking up a lot of your time today. I'm sorry, people. We spent too much time arguing and laughing at the beginning, and now I can't read the fecking thing because my eyes are so bad. Here we go. It's the 1990s and you live in Scotland. Lucky you. You and your partner have just discovered the new craze of track days. You can't afford anything flash, but both want a car that will be every day, but also a hoot to blast around Knock Hill. What do you choose? This caused some consternation amongst the troops because Manish quite fairly interpreted this as being one car. And also, and I think this is fair enough, suggested dramatically how the question could have been asked differently. Rather than you both want a car, you'd say you each want a car. And I have to say, his level of pedantry was admirable, but also deeply irritating because he was right. So I think we all agree that there can be irritation in being right. He was correct. But it is 2 cars and they have to be affordable. I didn't read the affordable bit, so I'm just going to go back and re-choose from my current Ford GT, which doesn't fit anything to do with the question. Chris Cooper, can you start, please?
We ought to explain where this came from.
Yeah.
This idea. So you and I have both seen it, but I think you shared it. There was a fantastic video I think you saw somewhere. It's on YouTube somewhere. We'll put the link on the YouTube version of the podcast. It's a home movie, sort of almost is a home movie from, I guess, 1993, 1994, taken trackside at the Knock Hill circuit in Scotland, which is in Fife. So beautiful part of Scotland. At the highest point of the circuit, you can look to the southeast and see the Firth of Forth and the bridges in Edinburgh in the distance, blah, blah, blah. Stunning circuit in Scotlandshire, for those in America. And the thing that's interesting about the video is it's in the early 90s when track days hadn't become completely infected by GT3 Porsches and Ferraris and lots of exotic stuff. So people had brought, like I did when I first started doing track days in the early 90s, you brought your everyday car, would it be normal, everyday working cars. The other thing that's interesting about it is the behavior of the people on the track. They are absolutely out of their tree. And the commentary from the bloke at the side of the track with his mates is almost the best thing about it. So there are some very everyday early 90s cars being.
So before you carry on, I got myself in a bit of deep water here because I just posted a link. I thought it was funny. Turns out the person that I posted it from had nicked the footage. So the guy who owns the footage, a guy called V9 Photo Works on Instagram. I've apologized to him in direct message and I've removed my link. It's his footage and it's go and look at the stuff he's got. It is just it's a time warp. It's for car people. It's the same as seeing people come out of illegal raves at 7 a.m. off their tits. It's exactly that. The cars. It's brilliant.
They tried putting, obviously the circuit organisers in those days thought we might be in a bit of trouble at the chicane in Knock Hill. So I've usefully got here a little circuit map of Knock Hill.
I love it.
Yeah.
And down, where is it? Yeah, down here, the chicane. For people who know, we'll put some links of stuff from Knock Hill on the YouTube thing.
Chris, sorry to cut into you. That looks scarily like the Adelaide Grand Prix circuit. Can I just say that?
It's a bit different.
A bit different, scary.
And the chicane, for those who know it and have raced there, it's uphill blind and it's sort of bounce off left-hand and right-hand curve and then a big dip down the other side. And the organisers have put cones on the approach to try and stop some of the misbehaviour, but it doesn't make any difference at all. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful trip down memory lane to early mid-90s, sort of everyday stuff. And I've got 2 that I think are fantastic. The first one, recognise that?
Yeah. That's in the film.
There's a white one, I think, in the film.
It's a Montego, wasn't it?
It's a Montego 2-litre turbo.
Yeah.
This was a 1989 car. This red one here. It's a Minter. How many horsepower would that have had?
About
150.
150.
Yeah, about that, I reckon.
Oh,
This is
we've
my-
got the same number.
This is my. I think it's about 150. Well, I'll check, and we'll about 150 something. Might be slightly more than that actually, because the Tomcat version, the Tomcat Turbo version of that engine in '94 had 200 and something, 210.
220.
This was I think that's an O series engine turbocharged in that car, and I think the Tomcat was a twin cam based on a K.
Yeah, I had the 220 coupe with the Targa roof.
Yeah,
I,
was that an
I
L
think
series
that-
or a K? It might have been
I
a
might
K.
be wrong. All the AR online people will correct me, but
Yeah,
I
they
think
will.
the Montego Turbo was a previous generation of engine.
But my favourite is that.
Oh, bloody hell.
I used to drive one of these in period. That is a Sierra XR 4x4,
2.8 Cologne.
2.9, yeah, Cologne.
Oh, Cologne, yeah.
Last one of the last of Cologne. The clever bit of that car was you could have a limited slip diff in it.
That's
Could
a good
you?
one.
Yeah, you could have. Yeah, you could do.
Was it an option?
It was. And I remember when I was working in Newcastle a lot of the time, in the days when it used to snow in the UK. It's about 200 something miles, 250 miles from Newcastle to London where I lived. And when the flights were stopped because of the snow, I go and rent one of these from the Hertz office at Walsington, Newcastle Airport, and drive down a very snowy A1 with anti-lock brakes, one of the very first cars I drove with the anti-lock brakes, limited slip diff, four-wheel drive. Either of those cars at Knockhill in the 90s would have been right at home in that video.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, bang on. Interesting place, Knockhill. You go first, Neil. I've got some thoughts about Knockhill. Very interesting, sir.
I'd like to go there. I've never been there.
Beautiful part of the world.
So, Neil, you do your two, please.
Yeah, okay. I've spent a little bit more money than that. Okay, here's a yes and no question. Name the most famous, very vintage Scottish Formula One racing car driver that died tragically.
Which one?
You mean
Well, you should
obviously
name them.
Jim Clark?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Jim Clark. So if you live up in Scotland and you're two people and you're talking about buying two tractors, one of you wants to be Jim Clark.
Yeah.
So you go out and buy yourself, which of course is a little bit more than 3K, a Lotus Elan Series 1 convertible, exactly like that Jim Clark. I'm sure we've all seen it because we're all very boring type people. The ad, the Jim Clark ad. I drive my Lotus Elan for pleasure, not because I have to say I'm the world champion.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, kilt and all.
And you know what? That car was at auction, and all the very clever Scottish people will tell us how much it sold for. We all should have bought it because it's some very clever person bought it for not a lot of money. And it's a convertible. It's got a hardtop on it, so I'm definitely getting that. And then, because obviously, I think these two people that want these two cars live together. Is that correct?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are together. So it's pointless having another car that's the same. They want to be able to swap the two cars so they can have different experiences and learn different types of driving. So one of them has a very beautiful classic car that will obviously be wonderful to drive and then break down often. So you then need a very reliable car. And the other thing that goes on up in Scotland, I think, and all my Scottish people, my Scottish friends talk about it all the time, is rallying.
Oh,
And
yeah.
why Scottish people are also very good at driving is because they drive around in sort of rough weather and pretend they're rally drivers. So in the 90s, what was the coolest rally car? Now, everyone will say Lancia Integrale. But frankly, it wasn't, because I've had 5 and I don't like them. And I was given one once, but that's another podcast. So I'm actually going out, and they're a world championship car, and they're so undervalued. A Toyota Celica GT4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Four-wheel drive? Yeah.
That. I think it won 93 or 94. It was world champion. Carlos Sainz.
King Carlos.
Yeah.
Carlos.
Obviously not the one now that we're all jealous of his hair, but his dad, he won the world championship. And this car, I don't know, they're very rare, difficult to find. They're probably
First gen or second gen?
I don't know, first
They've
gen.
got numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, first gen. So you've got two cars that are very different. You can enjoy them on the road as well. They're not going to break down, although obviously the Lotus will. And then you can swap between the two of you. You live at home and you can say, I'm going to take the Toyota today, and you take the Lotus. And when it breaks down, give me a ring, although your phone won't work because you're in Scotland and probably the phone doesn't work. So there's my two-car garage, and it's probably 75,000 quid I've spent there.
Yeah. Well, you treat yourself, Neil. It's a
Yeah.
new year.
Yes.
Manish, what are you going to have?
I imagine this as a real doctor couple. They're both GPs.
Mm.
And they have a certain amount of disposable income. It's not insane, but they can buy themselves cars. And I also imagine this was 1999, so we're right at the end of the millennium. They're basically based in Edinburgh, so they just drive kind of northeast. And I've always been a little bit in love with the Toyota Supra, and I thought the Series 4, which came out, just suddenly got very curvy. I just think that'd be a wonderful car. And you remember the 3-litre turbo?
Yeah.
They just had tons and tons of horsepower. I could see one of the two of them driving one of these things with the integrated wing. So my first one was the 1999 Toyota Supra Turbo.
Yeah.
And the other one, I just thought, do you remember all those sort of John Forsyth movies like Gregory's Girl, Local Hero? Lots and lots of Scotland is actually quite Italian.
It is. We know Italian Scottish people.
Exactly. So I thought the other one just had to be an Italian car, but an affordable one. And it just had to be the Alfa GTV 3-litre from 1999. And I mean, what a brace of cars that is. An Alfa GTV.
Yeah.
And a gorgeous Supra Series 4.
Can I just have a little shout out here for John Cleland?
Oh,
yeah. So I reckon, Knockhill's in Fife, which is obviously north of the Central Belt.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Clark was from the Borders. He's a Borders farmer. Charter Hall was the circuit's gone now. So road rallying was big in the Borders.
Mm.
And Charter Hall was a big circuit sort of in the sort of north of the Cheviers. But John Cleland, I think he was found with car dealers. Was it in Perth? Somewhere up there? Somewhere in the Central Belt. So early 90s, I reckon, everybody, and I was like that, sort of, John Cleland was my touring car hero. And driving in Knockhill, it's now, the circuit's owned by, I'll remember them in a minute, we'll edit in a bit. Very famous Scottish motor racing family. But John Cleland, he was a bloody hero. He was a car dealer, but he was an unbelievably good racing driver in Vauxhalls.
He did a special edition Vectra that I went to go and drive at his dealership once.
Really?
It was good. There was a Cleland special edition. You try finding one, but I don't think they sold too many because the base car was a bit,
Yeah, Vectra didn't really work. Cavalier was good.
Also, don't forget he was subject to one of the greatest pieces of Murray Walker commentary when he gives someone the bird.
Oh, God.
Where he goes, "That's it." John's saying, "I'm going to be first."
That was the 1992 decider at Silverstone, and I was there in the grandstand at Luffield when he and Steve Soper and Cleland, Soper and Tim Harvey, were in the Listerine-sponsored E36, particularly run BMWs. And John Cleland was in the Mobil One sponsored. Stop me if I'm getting too nerdy.
No.
And
keep going, mate.
Cleland sort of got a bit ambushed by Harvey and Soper going through Bridge. And then he got up the inside out the exit, I think it would have been Brooklands, and basically got the car on two wheels going towards Luffield. If Steve Soper hadn't been there to prop him up, he'd have gone over. Soper got pushed wide and going around Luffield. Kirk goes like that. Steve Soper decided, I'm just going to cut the corner and just went across the grass, T-boned him. They both ended up literally where I was standing. And there's a great story about how when they all calmed down, they realised we might have been a bit spot bother here, license-wise and regulatory-wise. So when they went to, just before, if either of them are listening, and I know Steve a little bit, if either of them are listening, I'll get this wrong, please correct us. But my sense is that both of them had to sort of say, should we just say it was a racing incident? And that way we both might survive.
Well, they were the reason why 250,000 people would turn up to watch the racing. It was absolutely brilliant.
Unbelievable.
It was magic. So who would like to hear my failing to make the start of a race story at Knock Hill.
Yes.
Oh, yes, please.
Auto Bytel Lotus Elise Championship, whatever year that was, 1990.
2000,
2000, I think it was. And I've
2001.
gone, 2000 it was. I think I've gone up there to do this race, and I've not seen Knock Hill before. It's a don't dismiss these small circuits. One of the most difficult circuits in the UK to master. Really tricky, technical. If I get there, this car has a central driving position. It's an Elise with a central driving position. It looked like an Exige. It became the Exige.
Nice.
VHPT engine, 20 cars on the grid. I'm much closer to the back. I've not been there before. Start of the grid, green flag goes. You've got to do a lap, green flag. We come over that first rise at the end of the start-finish straight, and it's quite apparent to me that my left testicle is caught in the belt. So I look, and I'm in trouble. I'm like, oh my God, this is like proper pain, like I've been hit with a cricket ball. So I reach down to try and adjust the belt, and then I realise I've made it worse. And at that point, I'm shrieking into the chin bar of my free Arai helmet. And I look up, and I'm just going straight into the gravel trap because I've panicked, and I've just gone straight on. So I end up in the litter with my left testicle is now already up to the size of a grapefruit. I think they can just throw me out, and I can go back to the start of the back of the grid, and they just go, no. So I just sat there nursing a swollen testicle. I think they did get me in the race eventually, but I can't remember. It was so shattering. Anyhow, there you go.
Yeah.
Chris, how old is your oldest child?
Haven't you got a
It's a long time after that, but there was some trauma applied to that part of my body.
It was the Shedden family. I've called the Shedden. And Knock Hill is also, I think, Knock Hill, the only circuit that's got a license to run the other way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Gosh, Shedden can drive a bit. Have you seen him?
Yeah.
God, he's good in an old car.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting circuit because I'm a massive rear-wheel drive fan, really. But I've done a few big days up there filming and that. Sorry, my dog's having a long drink in the background. It's very noisy. It's a circuit. It's one of the best circuits to have front-wheel drive car. Front-wheel drive really works around there because a lot of it is attacking crests. And actually, you want a really mobile rear end on a front-wheel drive car. Works really nicely. And if you've got a load of power, it can be quite frustrating there. So I'm going, and I want retro, and I want the most mobile rear end I can think of. So I'm going to go for a Citroen Zara VTS. That's a car that if you put 1 degree of steering lock on and think about lifting on the throttle, you are going backwards. So it's basically it's a shopping cart with an engine. Yeah. You find me one. I'm not sure I can find one, but that you'd be going into chicanes backwards in that thing. It'd be fantastic fun. And my other car is the Budget Hero. It's an E36, probably with an M3 engine put in it, rear wheel drive, strong diff, some disposable bodywork, and a single racing seat. That's what we'd have as a couple. And the front wheel drive car would be good in the snow up there. Probably get both for 12 grand, I would have thought. And then we can go and we can nip down to the Jim Clark Museum, which is a great place.
I want to go there.
Yeah. So we nip down there and we can celebrate Neil's very expensive car that he bought with our money.
Can I just win the beer pong here weekly? The nicest story Professor Sid Watkins ever told me about Senna was when Senna's hero was Jim Clark.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely his hero. And one of Prof's sons was at, I think he was at Gordonston, which school has the big red, they have the red blazers. I probably got that wrong. Anyway, the point is that Prof said, well, why don't we go up to the Jim Clark Museum together? And I'll never forget this story. They were driving up to Scotland, and they're near Berwick-on-Tweed, which is where Prof lives. And Prof said, I can't quite remember the turnoff that gets you to the Jim Clark Museum. It's a such and such turnoff. And Senna said, oh, it's over there. And he pointed to a road sign, which was 600 meters away. And Prof said, I couldn't see it, or 300 meters away. It was some ridiculous number. And Senna said, no, there's the road sign. And I remember him saying to me, one of the things you've just got to have as a great racing driver is terrifying vision.
Yes.
Because that's how you get the stereo. Anyway, they went there. They opened the museum for him very, very specially. So it was the curator, Prof, and Senna. And he just said, Senna spent the whole time walking around looking at all these artifacts going, I'll never be as good as him. I'll never be as good as him.
Wow.
Little anecdote.
What a
for
thing.
you.
Nice.
I
cool.
think he was. I think he was the racing driver's racing driver, wasn't he, Jim
yeah.
Clark? It's probably he was special. Right. Let's finish this marathon session, which has been a bit self-indulgent, a bit sweary, and I've shown too many pictures of my dog's testicles, which I apologise. But I feel a bit demob happy recording on a Sunday. It feels like we're in mufti. We're not in school uniform, are we?
Yeah, right.
We're in we're in mufti. Right. Music. Neil Clifford, give us a tune.
I've been listening to a bit of Peter Gabriel on my little. I've been in America this week, and I found Peter Gabriel again via that Kate Bush thing that he did. But then I thought, oh, Peter Gabriel, and he's a cool sod, really. Red Rain,
Yeah.
very good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good.
I heard an apocryphal. I think it's an urban myth, an apocryphal story about Peter Gabriel meeting 3D from Massive Attack, and he said, "Do I call you 3 or D?" Chris Cooper.
I have recently been watching a little bit of this TV show with Sylvester Stallone in it. Tulsa King. It's on Paramount.
Oh, it's mega! It's mega!
Isn't it brilliant? First TV show Stallone has ever done. He's 80 next year. It's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
And towards the end of the first series, which is 23, I'm just about to start the second series, there is a shootout in the bar that he's a partner in. And there's a soundtrack to that shootout, which is the same song, which is the background to the ending of the first episode of another seminal TV series 40 years earlier, that being Miami Vice, where Crockett and Tubbs are in the Daytona Spider on their way to stop the bloke running off in the seaplane, blah, blah, blah. The fact that that song, we all know what it is, Phil Collins, I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight, is so right for Miami Vice, and then 40 years later, it's so right for that shootout scene in Tulsa King. That's my song this week.
We're doing Genesis. We're doing the whole band of Genesis.
Yeah.
Now we just need Manish to completely poop the party.
Sorry, I'm going to. It's the 10th anniversary of the film Interstellar.
Yeah.
And
Is it?
I don't know. Yes. And
I feel old.
and it's been released in a lot of IMAXs. I went to see it again for the first time in 10 years with my boy. And there's a piece of music in it called Cornfield Chase.
Yeah.
Where they're chasing a drone and they haven't seen this drone. If people don't know the story, it's set in a very slightly dystopic future, and humankind is about to wipe itself out because we can't grow anything. And it's literally Christopher Nolan's, I think, best movie. It's very, very emotional. And Cornfield
It's quite
Chase,
sad.
It's quite sad, but then in the end, it's very kind of sad and happy, which is what I love. Bucolic is good. So Cornfield Chase, and it's by Hans Zimmer, and it's from the film Interstellar.
That's cool.
Mine's from a film as well. Well, it's a well-known tune. I am a bit of a fan of the film Collateral.
Oh,
I just think it's Tom Cruise's standout moment.
Yes.
He is so terrifyingly believable in the role. It's just shot amazingly. Jamie Foxx is. I just think he's a genius. I'm so glad he's recovered. Go onto YouTube and watch his Mike Tyson impressions if you want to lose your breakfast all over your laptop. He's absolutely brilliant, and he's a great singer. But he's as a vulnerable guy with just so many issues about his life and the direction of his life. He's stellar in it as well. But there's and the soundtrack is amazing, and the Audio Slave tune in that Shadow on the Sun, when it comes on, that acoustic guitar beginning, electric guitar beginning, is it's a great driving track. It's an electric guitar, sorry.
so I'm just going to jump in here with a little tiny Chris Harris Manish Pandey fact. The film that we've been working on, we try not to use this to plug anything, but the composer for the film that we were working on is Antonio Pinto. Antonio Pinto wrote the music for Collateral.
Did he?
He wrote that piece of music. Antonio wrote the piece of music that you've just talked about, and he is writing. And in fact, the score will be recorded next week on Wednesday and Thursday. And I just can't wait to hear it.
Wow.
He's a genius. That piece of music is genius.
Wow.
Well,
lovely.
I think it's just fantastic. That was a marathon session. I do apologise if I was a bit sweary to all of you listeners, and if I showed too many naughty photographs. But as I said, it's a Sunday, and if my head's been down. I'm trying to manage this film I've been trying to get live. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever to my friends. Neil with an I, Manish Mansell this week. I like that, and Chris Cooper.
Who did that? Who did that? Who did that?
Enjoy. You manage. We have ways. Enjoy what's left of your Friday, because this will be broadcast on a Friday, and we hope to have you in our little gang again next week. Bye bye.